Welcome back to All the Kings Men Live. I am Jesse Cohen. Joining me, as she does every week, Carlin Bathe. How are you doing today, Carlin?
I'm doing well, Jesse. Just had some breakfast cereal, and I'm ready to rock and roll.
What cereal?
I had Life cereal.
Oh, I was gonna say, we all right. Really, I haven't had Life in a long time.
It's still around. You should try it. It's pretty good.
I'm a Cheerios guy. I didn't used to be, but and then every now and then, if I'm gonna treat myself, I get some Lucky Charms. But
Cheerios don't treat us well on the live show. Remember,
that's true. That's right. We've been through that.
We don't need Cheerios.
we are hopefully going to be joined by Director of Player Development Nelson Emerson momentarily, but we are experiencing minor technical difficulties. So in the meantime, before we bring him in, Carlin, we were going to ask this question later in the show. We'll get to it right now at the top, and that question is: would you rather? I'm stealing a page out of Cameron Close's playbook from the Rainy Day podcast that they do over with the Ontario Reign. Okay. They start every show with a "Would you rather." So, Carlin, would you rather receive $10,000 right up front, no strings attached?
Yes.
Or $100 for every time somebody lies to you over the next 2 weeks?
Oh boy, Jesse, I think I want the 10 grand right up front. I really think I would. Yes, because I don't think that many lies would happen where it would accumulate to even equaling close to 10 grand.
Well, no surprise.
Lie that much?
Yeah, I do. No surprise. You have way more faith in people than I do.
Oh my God. Maybe also I don't talk to enough people to have them lie to me. So I've got like 2 people in my household that I'm hoping are telling the truth all the time. Yeah. I don't know.
Obviously, the quarantine situation reduces the amount of contact people have with other people. So this might be a unique. I would take the $100, 100%.
You would take the $100? Wait, 100%. Every time someone lied to you?
For the next 2 weeks, absolutely.
What? Oh, 10K. Bailey says 10K because he stays inside. Aperture says 10K. Oh my God, Aperture's here. What's up, man? And then Traveling Queen Irene says 10K, please. Jesse, you're the only one who wants the $100.
Well, like I said, I may not have factored the quarantine situation into it, but in a normal situation, I would 100% take the $100 each time. It looks like we have Nelson Emerson now joining us.
Yes.
So I'm going to wait. There we go. There he is. Oh, no, he's shaking his head no.
No.
Here, I was just disappointed in my Skype expertise.
Oh, well.
Oh, but you made it.
Yeah, it's all
figured it all out.
Yeah,
that's
I know. It's just I'm outside for all these calls, and I hear a lawn blower machine outside, so I came inside, and it seems a little dark in here. And then my Skype thing didn't work because we've been using Microsoft Teams, so I ran upstairs to get my son figured out for me. And anyways, I'm on.
Well, before we get into sorry, go ahead, Carlin.
I was going to say, I can't figure Microsoft Teams out, so you got one up on me there. Go ahead, Jesse.
Nelson, before we get into the players, I'll ask you the same question I just asked Carlin. If you could have $10,000, no strings attached right away, or $100 for every time someone lies to you over the next 2 weeks, which would you take?
Well, I'm gonna go with. I'm a believer that our world is going in a good direction, in a better direction. I'm going to take the $10,000.
There you go.
I suspect you and Carlin are much better people than I am, but I'm glad to hear about that you're taking the positive route. So let's go ahead and get into the roster. Obviously, the NHL draft lottery is coming up at the end of next week. And so before we start worrying about who the Kings should take or who the Kings might take, I thought it would be instructive for Kings fans to take a moment and look at the roster and see who's even on the team right now, what their contract situations are. So for right now, we're just going to focus on the forwards that are currently under contract next season. That is the 2020-21 season, and that includes Kopitar, Brown, Carter, Iafallo, Kempe, Lizotte, Velarde, Moore, Amadio, and Ferk. Now I'm going to start from the bottom, Nelson, and any of you in the chat room, and that is the Twitch chat room. If you're on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter, we will not be able to see your comments. So if you want to ask a question, go ahead and join us on the Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/LA Kings.
I'll be monitoring that for y'all here.
Carlin will be taking a look at that. So Nelson, let's start with Gabriel Velarde. He only plays a handful of games at the end of the season, but how likely is it that he will strongly compete for a spot this coming season?
Extremely high. Real likely. we were so excited to see Gabe get back and get his feet under him and, start playing hockey. What a long stretch of going through all the things he had to. And, once he got up to the Kings, his 10 games was, I thought, good to really good. He started to, figure out kind of where the league a little bit. I mean, he's only 10 games, but I think we and fans and everybody, coaches, got to see what a lot of the uptick in Gabe's all about, and we were excited in a lot of the things we saw. And moving forward, we do have a lot of excitement for the player.
Now, players like Kopitar, Brown, and I follow. That's your leading scorers, your top line. It seems pretty clear that those players will be back and probably in similar roles. But players like Trevor Moore and Blake Lizotte, newcomers, whether it's undrafted free agents like Lizotte or players acquired in a trade like Trevor Moore, have they shown enough in this one season to be considered part of that group that has to lose a spot more than they have to earn a spot?
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, obviously Todd McClellan was going to be the guy, trying to really, he'll be the one putting his lineup in place. But I think you're correct on that, Jesse. I mean, the thing is with Lizotte, he showed why we all love this game. I mean, here's a kid who comes in and he's undersized and everyone's counting him out, and he did exactly what you want everybody to be like. He just went after and he took a spot away from, maybe somebody else. People counted him out, said he can't play, he's too small, can't do this. But every shift, he just competes and works and works. And where we are as a team, we want players like that. We want players to come in and have that competitive nature to them, and that trickles down through your lineup. I mean, believe me, a lot of the older players, when they're playing with Blake or he's on our team, it helped them as well. So Blake did something that we need, and God, I'm so happy for him and so excited to watch a player like him. Now, Trevor Moore, I think he's kind of getting, into that area of his career where, he's played a little enough in the league now to figure it out. He knows kind of what it's all about. Sure, he gets traded to us. He wasn't here for a long time, but again, he brought us something that we wanted. We wanted more speed, a little bit more pace in our play, skill, a little bit of skill. So, I think he's kind of entering those years in his career where he wants to establish himself as a regular, and I think he's going to be able to do that. I think he was a player that can help our team just because of some of the assets I mentioned.
One of the challenges of constructing a roster when you have so many young players is trying to make sure that you have the right players in the right spot. And, you can go from having not enough players to having far too many. And obviously the Kings' success in 2012 and 2014, part of it was predicated around center depth. Now you've got Anze Kopitar, potentially Jeff Carter, Blake Lizotte, Gabe Vilardi, Mike Amadio, and then you have all the younger players, whether it's Kupari or Turcotte or Madden, who play center. Is everybody who's currently slotted in at the pivot going to play that position moving forward, or does Hockey Ops have conversations with the coaching staff about transitioning centers to wing?
Well, I mean, we do talk about things like that because I think we've done a nice job of developing players that are centermen, and we have some depth with younger players that are able to do that. I think one of the luxuries we also have are we have centermen that can play wing, and that is something that we'll be able to do as we move down the road. I mean, you mentioned we've talked about Gabe already, and I think he is able to play wing. We think a guy like Kupari can play wing. And then you mentioned Jeff Carter at the start, and I mean, I think we got to give a lot of credit to Jeff in the season he had. I think he was skating real well. I think finally he felt, this is before he got hurt at the end of the year, but the first 3 quarters of the season, I think he felt good. I think he was a good leader, and I think players like obviously Kopi at the upper echelon, where he is in the league, but a player like Jeff also helps these younger players too, and the ability that Jeff has that he can move to the wing, I think opens up some spots for some younger guys as well.
Nelly, how about someone like Martin Firk? You guys offering him a 2-year contract extension. What did you see from him that may have surprised you all after he was brought up during the season?
We shouldn't be surprised at what we saw when we brought him up, because that's kind of his bread and butter here. Throughout his career, he can score, and he loves to shoot, and he can score. Now, the knock on him was, well, can he do it in the NHL? And he's done it. He did in Grand Rapids in the AHL. Maybe didn't get the time he wanted with the Red Wings, but came to us, and again was a great player in the American League, a player that not only was good, scoring and creating offense, but he was a good guy around the group as far as leadership. He really worked hard in practice, was always early, did everything off ice that he needed to do, and for our young guys to see that is important. So he came up to the NHL, and remember the game in San Jose when all of a sudden, I think he had 2 goals in San Jose on the road. And those were goals that just goal scorers get. They were all of a sudden he's in front of the net and they go
same
in.
Spot twice too. That game, exactly.
You could have a guy like whoever me in front of the net take those same shots. They don't go in, but for some reason goal scorers they just happen to go in, and so anyways we need a little bit of that in our lineup, guys that are natural ability of scoring. So. When he came up, and all of a sudden the last couple of games when he was playing with Gabe, they seemed to have some chemistry. So he's a player that helps us, and that's kind of why we signed him.
Obviously, the quarantine and the shutdown has affected all sorts of aspects of the industry, but one of the ways that we won't yet understand how it will affect is the Seattle expansion draft. Without getting into specific names, how far in advance have you guys started thinking about protected lists and who might be available and what other teams might make available, and trying to steer them towards selecting the player that ultimately every team has to lose?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and I mean it's never too early. And I remember being in meetings last year with Rob and Jeff, and Jeff Solomon. He is, believe me, it's never too early. He is always bringing that up, and it's funny. You think, well, that's a long way away. Well, it's not a long way away. You gotta maneuver things around your roster and your lineup, and contracts are written in a certain way and time frames and things like that. And Jeff Solomon is excellent at doing things like that and being organized. I think he'd be a great guy for you guys to have on this show to explain all that stuff to you. But
take a note there.
Yeah, take a note. Get Sully on here, but it's not too early. He's anyways. We feel we're in a good position that way. Just because we have so much youth and we have contracts that are now in good situations. I think Rob and Jeff, they've the whole group has done an excellent job of kind of maneuvering our contract situation. We're in a lot better spot than we were a year, 2 years ago.
Jesse, we have a question here in the chat. Hannah Davey wants to know, Nelson, does not having a draft combine affect the draft at all and how you choose players? Does that draft combine really have that big of an impact when you go to choose?
It'll have somewhat of an impact, and it is a fair question. I mean, they wouldn't have that combine if it wasn't useful. So, I think maybe not being able to see a player in the physical part of the testing and the elements where our scouts or our Matt Price, our strength and conditioning coach, him not being there, being able to look at the player and seeing, maybe what natural athletic ability he has, what strength he might have, just kind of guessing what he might, be like 4 or 5 years down the road. Another big part of that combine is you had all the players in the same spot, and you could do interviews every day. So it's a negative that we're not having it, but every team is in the same boat. And I think we're fine because it's just the year it is. I mean, it's just the way the world is right now, unfortunately. And every team will be okay that they didn't have the combine, and we'll work through it. Most of our work scouting wise, and maybe we'll get into this a little later, but Mark Unetti and his group do such a great job during the year at getting information on all these players. 90% of the work had already been done. Interviews, obviously live views, Now they just follow up with all kinds of video views. So, and we're still able to do like things like these with the players. You know what I mean? These kind of Skype interviews or Teams or Zoom or whatever you want to use. So we'll still do a lot of that before, the fall when the draft is.
There's a possibility that the AHL, the CHL, the ECHL, the NCAA, all of the development and junior leagues might either have postponed seasons or delayed seasons or possibly even canceled seasons next year. Do you guys have contingency plans in place for the prospects and other players to get ice time, to stay, fresh, to not lose a year of their development?
Yeah, we talked about it almost daily, just because it seems like you guys, if you turn the news on, things change daily with what we're doing with the pandemic, right? Like how we're supposed to act or so it's the same thing with all those leagues. We hear all kinds of different scenarios, and as far as what we do is we're planning different scenarios too. And we know that our players, we don't want them not playing games until January, right? We're one of those 7 teams where, we're not in this playoff race or, try to win a Stanley Cup thing. So we have to figure out different ways for our young players, for our whole team, to make sure we're ready and game ready too. So we've had little ideas, little things that we're talking about, whether it's just things within our organization, or it's maybe just things with people on the West Coast, the other 2 teams, or it's maybe even more a larger scale. So a lot of different scenarios, but geez, we're just kind of throwing things out there, and we're trying to make sure we're ready when this happens in the fall.
Jesse, there's another question here in chat, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
He wants to know, Nelson, what kind of player are we looking for in the draft this year?
That probably means our first pick or second.
Yeah.
Like,
let's go with the first overall.
Let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, we feel we've done a real good job, kind of collecting, players the last couple of years, and maybe more are, favored the forward type role, like we talked about. We're deep at center, things like that. We do realize that we have Kellyov as a winger that can, put up numbers. We have Fagemo on the wing that can put up numbers, but we do realize that, maybe the winger position is something that, we'll look to address. But also, I just led that into, we realize that, defense, too, is something that we're going to have to take a long look at, making sure we start building a library of players at the defense position. So again, I would say, just like everybody else would say when you're on these calls, we're going to take the best player in that, wherever we're going to be drafting, the best player slotted in that role. And we're okay with it being a winger or a defenseman. We'll just take whoever we feel is the best player at that slot.
I love that phrase, library of defensemen. I'm gonna steal that, if that's okay.
Okay.
Before we go, though, Nelson, Bailey wanted me to ask you, I've been going on all summer long about an idea I've had. I'm tired of the draft. I think players should be unrestricted free agents when they turn 18, and teams should be allowed to sign whomever they want. He wants to know what you think of my idea. I've been told I'm a crazy and an idiot and all sorts of things. So I'm just curious Bailey's curious what you think about that.
Well, I'm trying to figure out, so in my head, I'm thinking of examples of where that has worked or been done before. And youth hockey does that. You're like a free agent every year. All these kids, like, they're just jumping ship. Professional hockey. Well,
I mean, we'd still have a salary cap and contract limits and all that. It's right. just how you enter the league. That's all.
I know.
Very excited for this answer.
So do you pick so the player would have to choose. So he would, is he going to pick the team that just won the Stanley Cup, or is he going to pick a team at the bottom where he thinks he might play more?
Exactly.
There is a salary cap, you're saying? Is there a rookie cap in this and all that?
I haven't thought that. Let's just say yes for now.
So the money's even across the board, right?
For the first 3 years, sure. But if you sign with the Penguins and you're a center, you're not getting a big contract if they still have Crosby and Malkin.
Well, the player in me says I love it. I'm jumping on.
Wow.
I'm jumping on board.
There you
but
go.
The management side of this and the I'm gonna have to say I'm gonna agree with Bailey. I'm not sure I love it.
All right. Well, someday you guys will see I'm right. But for now, we want to thank you for joining us, Nelson.
Okay.
And
thank you so much, Nelly.
We also want to thank our presenting sponsor, Manscaped. Here's a word from them.
It's one all, one shot, now the future is yours. Go!
All right, well, that was Nelson Emerson. I thought there were some really great answers in there. And look, I'm going to say I take a 50% win off of that final question about the draft. Carlin, what do you think?
I didn't think it was even going to be entertained that far. I thought for sure you'd get a big old, but no. I mean, that was impressive. That shocked me, really.
Yeah, well, sometimes my crazy ideas have a little bit of something behind them. Now, we were going to put the would you rather question here, but we did it at the top. And that was, of course, would you rather accept $10,000 up front or $100 for every lie somebody told you over the next 2 weeks? But now, instead, we are going to shift straight into the LA Kings postseason awards.
Let's do it.
And we are honored to be able to announce them here on All the Kings Men Live. So we're going to start off with Andrei Kopitar because he has collected 3 awards. We're going to go through them right now. First up, the Bill Libby MVP Award. This is voted on by the media. Carlin, you and I both voted on this.
Yes.
It is given annually to the Kings player who is the team's most valuable player as determined by the local media. It is named for Bill Libby, a former LA sports writer who died in 1984. I mean, Andrei Kopitar is the MVP. I don't think that's disputable, right?
It was an easy write-in for me. It wasn't no. I have no words. I literally was just like, it was like my brain was on autopilot. I was like, yep, Andrei Kopitar makes sense. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I don't know that it was unanimous, but I'm going to have to go ahead and assume that it was. And part of the reason is because the second award he's collecting is that he was the leading scorer with 62 points, 21 goals, and 41 assists in 70 games. He was also the Ace Bailey Memorial Award player. Now, that is voted on by the players.
Yep.
But again, not much of a surprise there, right?
Not really. And it's given to Kings players who are the most inspirational as determined by their team. So that's great that they're awarding that to their captain, who, of course, should be inspiration to them day in and day out.
The season that they missed the playoffs, Jonathan Quick missed 60 games. Andrei Kopitar hurt himself, but still put in the bulk of a season. To me, that season defines him more than the Stanley Cup wins or, being the team's leading scorer almost every year. The guy obviously comes out and gives it his all every season. Moving on, we go to the Darrell Evans Youth Hockey Service Award winner. Now, this goes to Trevor Lewis, and it is determined by the Kings Hockey Development Department and given annually to the Kings player who, quote, determined to continue the club's efforts in growing the game of hockey in our area. This is the only award for Trevor Lewis, so people who have followed the Kings Awards every season know what that means down the road for a different award. But we love Trevor Lewis, right?
We do. And not just his on ice stuff that he's able to do with youth hockey. I mean, just off the ice. I was at a library visit with him last year and him reading, B is for Bailey to all the kids there. That's still youth hockey development. It's just outside of an ice arena. And Trevor loves it. He's got 2 kids of his own. And I think that's a very deserving award for him.
Yeah, and was involved even this week in some off-ice stuff, and we'll get to that in a second. Now, next up is the most popular player. This one sort of caught me a little bit off guard, and it goes to Blake Lizotte. Now, the most popular player award is given annually by the Kings Booster Club to the most popular Kings player. So fans, if you're wondering how you can have a say in these awards, join the Kings Booster Club. Carlin, Blake Lizotte for most popular player, I'm assuming this is because of his, first of all, his personality, but also just the fact that he never takes even a second of a shift off.
He doesn't even take a second to breathe, sneeze, yawn, blink. I mean, he's just, Nelly was talking about him and how kind of, I don't know, we called him a pest all season long, right? And I agree with the popularity that he is being awarded here for the most popular player. I think fans all over Twitter were all over him as well. I mean, there were like battles on like what his nickname should be. He came in and made a splash on this team, not just on the ice, but again, off the ice. And I don't know. I totally agree with that right there. Most popular player for sure.
There were nights where I legitimately felt like he might have been the best player on the ice for the team. And on All the King's Men, the audio version, the podcast version, we frequently say happiness is measured by expectation. And Blake Lizotte is one of those people who set high expectations and then never let you down.
Met them every time. Every single time.
Like Nelson said, he came in and stole a roster spot. I mean, I certainly did not expect him to be on this team, and he was great all season. So moving on, we've got 3 more names to mention, but a bunch of awards to give out. We're going to just start with Matt Roy because he collected this year. Starting out with the Mark Bavis Memorial Award for Best Newcomer. This is also voted on by the media and is given annually to the member of the Kings organization that makes the greatest impact as a newcomer. It is named, of course, for former Kings scout Mark Bavis, who tragically passed away in the 9/11 attacks. But Best Newcomer, I mean, it could have been Blake Lizotte. It could have been Cal Peterson. It could have been a bunch of players. But I went with Matt Roy for this one. I'm assuming you did as well, Carla?
I went the other two.
Oh, okay.
I believe I went with Blake Lizotte for this one. And then I think I gave Matt Roy the other two that you're about to mention.
All right. So the next one is, of course, Outstanding Defenseman. Now, Drew Doughty and Rob Blake have tied for winning this award 6 times each. But I, again, voted for Matt Roy. And I'm going to go ahead and just quickly dip my toe into the fancy stat pool.
Let's go. Fancy stat.
Apologize. Come on. Right off the top, though, of course, he has a plus 16. Now, that's not a fancy stat. That's a stat that a lot of people malign. But in this house, we respect plus minus. And he had a plus 16. The next highest plus minus on the team was Andrei Kopitar with 6. Wow. So I mean, that just goes to show you that. Now, Corsi 4, and I understand a lot of people get uncomfortable when we talk about Corsi, but
just break it down in layman's terms, because I feel like people get uncomfortable when you just say the word, but they don't know what the stat is referring to.
It's just shots on goal. It's just how many times your team attempts a shot on goal versus how many times the other team attempts a shot on goal against your team. And amongst defensemen, he led the team with 56.1. The only players who had a higher rating with a considerable amount of games was Blake Lizotte, 56.5, and Tyler Toffoli at 57.6. And again, all that means is that when Matt Roy is on the ice, the Kings are directing offense towards the opponent 56% of the time. And again, highest rating on the Kings for that. Combine that with the fact that he, was called Steady Eddie, I believe, by Mike Crawford, and just really became one of the most reliable defensemen on the team. In a season where they didn't do fantastically in the standings. That was why I went ahead and gave that vote. Next award is the Defensive Player Award, which is only different from the Outstanding Defenseman because other players who are eligible are goalies and forwards. It is given annually to the Kings player, regardless of position, who most excels on the defensive end of the ice, as determined by the local media. Carlin, who did you vote for this award?
Defensive player, Matt Roy. So okay. I going back to not even a fancy stat here. Let's just go back to him at the beginning of the season. He didn't start off the way that he ended, Jesse. And there was a podcast that he did for NHL Network when we were over there in New York, and I got to follow them around the NHL studios. It was him and Sean Walker. He opened up about how him and Todd McClellan had a chat at the beginning of the season that kind of corrected the course that he led for the rest of the year. And I feel like these awards are coming from him taking such good constructive criticism from a new coach and wanting to put his best foot forward. And it's just impressive to see where he ended up at the end of the year. And I feel like all of these are so deserved, but it didn't just happen magically. Like Blake Lizotte, it's great. He came in with a splash. He was so consistent the whole time. He never, he never wavered. Matt Roy didn't start off the season like that, but turned it around when he was told and constructed. And I think that that's just even more impressive that he ended off like this and was awarded all these awards. So
Yeah, and if you're a fan and you're wondering whether or not we're just playing favorites in the quote unquote media, Matt Roy also won the Unsung Hero Award, or as we're calling it, the Trevor Lewis Award, and that is given annually to the Kings player who contributed the most to the team without receiving proper recognition for his contribution, as determined by Kings players. So
here's these proper recognitions right here too. So
that's right. Well, I guess he can't. I guess he can't win it next year. It'll go back to Trevor Lewis if Trevor Lewis comes back. But Trevor Lewis again has won the award 7 times. But that is going to round it out for Matt Roy. I skipped one. I apologize to Austin Wagner, winning the Jim Fox Community Service Award, determined by the Kings Care Foundation and given annually to the Kings player who best exemplifies strong community outreach by actively working with local youth organizations and community groups to increase awareness and raise funds to support the Kings community signature initiatives, education, health-related causes, and recreation. So congratulations to Austin Wagner, and thanks to him for all the work he does in order to win the Jim Fox Community Service Award.
Great for him. He's great with the kids. That's a no-brainer right there for me.
Now, finally, 2 awards that I had not even thought about when we got our ballots. And first up, Player of the Year. Now, behind the scenes a little bit, everybody was getting a bit frustrated because Alex Iafallo kept winning Player of the Month, and of course, he is the Player of the Year.
For good reason too, Jesse.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, well, I think he is sort of, I think the ceiling for what people can expect out of Blake Lizotte, right? It's a similar story, comes in, steals a spot. There was, some question as to whether or not he'd make the roster, and he winds up on the top line with Kopitar and Brown, and hasn't given that spot up. And obviously we're looking at his hat trick game against the Coyotes this season, but great guy, great player. And, it's moves like that I think stabilize this roster and make it possible for the Kings to put on a product that fans would want to watch and be excited for, even if they're not making the playoffs every season.
I'm just staring at this compilation.
Yeah.
I was trying to listen to what you were saying. And the GIFs and the different videos were so good. I hadn't seen half of that. I was like, wait, what's this one? What's that one?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But no, another consistent player, like you said, didn't give up his spot on the top line, has held it now for what, two full seasons now, does not budge unless, a little bit of a shuffle happens every odd game or so. But you can count on him. You really can count on him. And I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet either, which is exciting to think about if you really think about it like that. I don't think we've seen the best of Alex Iafallo. I think he's still unpacking as we go, and he just keeps getting better. He's trending up.
Yeah, no, exactly. And final award, and again, I had completely forgotten about the fact that 2020 marks the end of a decade. So the player of the decade, of course, Captain Anze Kopitar. We had a conversation about this the other day, again, peeking behind the scenes, and I wasn't thinking about it. I wasn't concentrating, and I just said, player of the decade. That's interesting. And our producer asked us, well, who would have you picked? And I said, yeah, Anze Kopitar, of course. I mean, the leading scorer, the captain. He was an alternate captain when they won the Cup twice, but 2-time Cup winner, Olympian, All-Star. I mean, he has become one of the most important Kings in Kings history.
You said it all right there, Jesse. There's nothing to follow up with after
Perfect.
that. He's
right.
the player of the decade.
Yep. So that is the Kings Awards. Thanks to the Kings for letting us announce them here on this show. We're going to move on now to the social media roundup. It's getting trickier and trickier as we move away from actual games to find stuff. But Alex Turcotte and Arthur Kaliev were invited to Team USA's World Junior Summer Showcase. And it turns out Jordan Spence was named to Team Canada's. And of course, we mentioned last week that Lukáš Pařík was named to the Czech national team. Now, Carlin, there isn't going to be a World Junior Summer Showcase. This will be done.
Is there not?
This will be done virtually.
Okay, because I'm like, I like to think of things can change as it goes, right? So I'm holding on to hope that maybe something changes. I don't know, but the summer showcase, for those who don't know, it's technically supposed to be something that showcases the players before they make their selections for the next World Junior Championship. So that'll be interesting to see how that's done.
It will
virtually.
be. It really will be.
Yeah, but congrats to all three of those players for being selected for that. That's a huge honor, especially at that age, and just that's the goal for guys like that. So
now there was also a young Kings fan. This is again the off ice stuff we talked about earlier. A young Kings fan was nervous to have surgery. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there it is. The tweet there. Sorry. My son Max is having major surgery next Monday and couldn't understand why. The whole team will probably not be able to visit him while he's recovering at Shriners Hospital in Salt Lake. Any chance he can get at least a shutout? And we have a little video of Max here.
Mom, when I have my surgery next week, I really want the Los Angeles Kings to visit.
You want the Los Angeles Kings to visit?
Yes.
The whole team?
Yes.
Now, obviously, even in the best of times, it'd be difficult to get 23 professional athletes into a surgery theater. But the Kings reached out, and so did Trevor Lewis in this tweet here you can see on the screen. So, again, just an idea of why Trevor Lewis won that award that we mentioned earlier. And we hope Max is recovering and doing well. And obviously, we wish him all the best.
Yes, we do. That was very sweet of Max and Max's mom to post that, and very sweet of Trevor to reply.
Now, it is June, so that means it's time for dads and grads. Carlin, are you any big plans for Father's Day? I know your dad lives out on the East Coast.
He does. I'll probably just give him a call, FaceTime with him a little bit, and say hello. And speaking of grads, we've got some graduation advice from the one and only Jim Fox, and you can check out his video on the LA Kings Twitter, and it's a good listen. And Jim has a way with words, and he's always so just optimistic. And if you're a recent grad, or if you just want to hear Jim Fox speak, go to the LA Kings Twitter and check out this video for sure.
And lots of responses and pictures of Kings fans graduating. So congratulations to all of those who are doing so. And of course, it wouldn't be a real social media roundup without checking in on Meatball Luff.
Yeah, it wouldn't be at all. And Meatball apparently learned how to swim here. Just a boy and his water pylon. Matt Love posts this video of him. And I actually know this, that bulldogs can't swim that well, like if at all. So the life vest is something that's like extremely crucial in any bulldog swim training. So I'm so extremely happy to see that he's got that wrapped around him, because Meatball is precious and we must protect him at all costs.
Well, I had lab mixes growing up, and they could move almost as fast in water as they could on. Well, that's not true, but they could swim pretty well. So
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
But I do love the little life preserver on Meatball there.
It's perfect.
We're gonna move on now to the community roundup. This Saturday, the Black Girl Hockey Club is doing an online seminar, I suppose, meeting. I'm not entirely sure what to call it, but
like a live stream panel discussion.
Yeah, and it's going to be held on Eventbrite. I've already RSVP'd, so I will be there. I'm just trying to pull up the thing. Join us for a Juneteenth celebration at 10 a.m. Saturday, June 20th, with a panel discussion hosted by the Black Girl Hockey Club. We'll be talking about the institutional racism in hockey, how Black folks and allies can fight against it, and what comes next. Now, Blake Bolden will be participating, and she is a scout for the LA Kings. So I would encourage all of you to go ahead and RSVP if you're interested in attending that and listening to those talks. As we mentioned last week also, Children's Hospital of Los Angeles is now accepting plasma donations from people who have recovered from COVID-19, which may be used to help others fighting the illness if you're fully recovered from a verified COVID-19 diagnosis and would like to join the fight against the novel coronavirus. Please call the Children's Hospital Los Angeles Blood Donor Center. That number is 323-361-2441 to make an appointment. Again, call the Children's Hospital Los Angeles Blood Donor Center at 323-361-2441, or you can find information about that on the Kings website. And of course, also there's the Learn at Home with the LA Kings, the various educational and hockey-related activities. Have your child become a Royal Reader, complete Kings-themed coloring pages, and even start an interactive hockey-themed STEM curriculum. Head to lakings.com/learnathome for the current list of activities and continue to check back as more get added. And Carlin, some good news.
Let's hear it.
TSPC, the Toyota Sports Performance Center, is open in a reduced capacity. You can go ahead and check that out. I've heard that it is not that difficult to get in. You have to go through a few testing procedures, and they want to make sure everybody's okay. But you can contact them for more info about that. And of course, Carlin, your Twitch stream. Tell us all about your Twitch stream.
Oh gosh. Well, we've got a few followers in here that also are followers of the Twitch stream. So I see you, I hear you. Thank you for being here and tuning into this as well. And if you like to watch people play video games, I play Call of Duty now, and it's a lot of fun. Jesse, you stop by. You know,
I did.
You hang out. It's great. It's my extracurricular activity while I'm stuck at home. So,
we all need one.
Thing.
Well, anyway, that is going to do it for this episode of All the Kingsmen Live. Carlin, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Jesse. This is a lot of fun.
We want to thank Nelson Emerson for joining us to talk about the LA Kings forward depth. We want to thank everybody behind the scenes at the LA Kings for all the work they put in making that Alex Iafallo video for us, and making sure that we have visual aids to accompany what we're talking about.
And yeah, it totally took my complete attention off of everything, because I was like, what is this perfection? So yes, thank you so much to them. They do a great job.
And if you're watching this and you're not aware, we do have a host of podcasts that cover all of these topics more in depth, including All the King's Men, the Rainy Day podcast that covers the Ontario Reign, and Fox and Faust just wrapped their first season of the Fox and Faust podcast. But all of those are archived. You can go subscribe or listen to old episodes at lakings.com/podcast. Moving forward, we are going to be getting into player evaluations this summer. We are going to go ahead and take a look at potential draft picks the Kings might be interested in. We're waiting to find out what position they will ultimately select in the first round of the NHL draft. But we will have more interviews with members of the front office, coaching staff, scouts, etc. moving forward. So stick around, Kings fans. We will have plenty of content for you as we traverse these challenging months where we won't have any Kings hockey. But we will also be previewing the NHL return to play qualifying rounds. We got a lot of stuff. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye, everyone.